Oh, and if I forgot to mention, we are going to be recording, so I will share the recording with you later, Christian. All right, I know there are some of you that have just joined. Thank you for being very prompt. I'm going to just give everybody time to come in. So we'll get started at 4:05. The folks that you see on your screen right now are myself, Kripa. We also have Eileen Depra, who some of you may have spoken with. If not, will be speaking with soon. Eileen is a member of my team at the firm. She's also an immigration attorney, helps me with some of my EB5 matters. And then we have Christian Tolby, who is Vice President of EB5. I forget your title sometimes. Vice President of EB5 at Christian Tyler Properties, and they are going to present on the regional center as well as their offering. We're going to leave enough time for questions, and Christian, entirely up to you. Feel free to leave whenever you want, but we'll keep going. You're more than welcome to stay, help me answer questions. For any of you that have questions, feel free to jump in as we're going through this. Eileen is going to be monitoring questions, but also feel free to use the chat box. And then we will just get through them as and when we can. Like I said, I have no restrictions on time, so I will happily stay here and answer all your questions at the end if we need to. But what we're going to cover is, again, essentially two parts. One is going to be project offering, history of Christian Tyler Properties, or CTP, and their current projects. And then I will cover more specifically the process, where we are. I know there's a lot of rumors and a lot of fears about the biggest, beautiful, most gold card that was introduced. Well, the website was opened this week. So we will talk about the Trump gold card, how that plays into the current EB5 regulations, and then also what USCIS is currently looking at in terms of source of funds, and what those trends look like, particularly for Indian and Chinese investors. All right, so 3 more minutes till we get started. If I forgot to mention, or for those of you that might just be joining us, I am recording this, so we will have this sent out to everybody that registered. If you somehow found out about this last minute and decided to join, feel free to send Eileen or I an email with your contact information, and we'll make sure that you're on the receiving list for a copy of the video. It generally just gets posted to our law firm website, but I'll make sure that you are informed that it is up. All right. Okay, I was gonna give folks time, but looks like there are some people. I don't want to keep anybody beyond when they need to be here. Want to be respectful of people's time. So, I'm gonna get started. For those of you that I may not have worked with previously, my name is Kripa Upadhyay. I am an immigration attorney with Buchalter at the Seattle office. Buchalter is a national firm. We are about 500 odd attorneys, full service practice in about 15 cities and growing now. But Eileen and I are both in Seattle. We also have a presence in Oregon. So the rest of our immigration team is in Oregon. Just the immigration team alone, and this is an interesting factoid. I did not plan it this way. I promise I didn't. But our immigration team is all first generation immigrants or children of immigrants. And between the 7 of us, we speak 11 different languages. So Eileen, who you see on the screen, speaks Korean fluently. Our paralegal in Seattle, Candy Artigas, she speaks Spanish. Our newly acquired legal assistant, Akiko's maternal grandmother, is Japanese. So she speaks a little bit of Japanese. And then our team in Portland, we have Andrea Bartoloni, who actually used to be the honorary consul general for Italy. And so he is fluent in Italian and Spanish. And then our two other paralegals there are actually attorneys from their respective home countries. So Sam was born in Iran, raised in Germany, that she speaks Farsi, German, and French, I believe. Um, Christian side, really. And then I speak Nepali, Hindi, Urdu, Spanish. But
I
I've been in the immigration space for 15 years. I am, as I said, I guess the lead, if you will, of the immigration practice at Buckhalter. I also serve on the American Immigration Lawyers Association's national EB5 committee, and I have been on that national committee now for the last 3 or 4 years. The National EB5 Committee, for those of you that may be unfamiliar with it, is a group of attorneys that practice predominantly in EB5, or that at least file probably a majority of EB5 cases within the immigration bar. And so we are appointed to serve on the national committee by the board for the American Immigration Lawyers Association, which means we get to interface with USCIS, learn about all of the trends, bring up issues that we are seeing from other attorneys to USCIS, and basically try and get answers, not just for our clients, but also for the immigration attorneys within the US and also outside. Right, so that is my role. As I said, joining us today is Christian Tolby from Christian Tyler Properties. I want to make clear that we are two separate entities. We are, again, Eileen, I, and the Buckhalter team are attorneys. But as attorneys, we have the privilege of working with a number of different regional centers, and CTP is probably one of our favorites. Right up there in the top two. But that's because I have worked personally, I have worked with CTP and with Christian and his team for a long time now. We've recently had an absolute slew of approvals, which we are so, so happy about. We are up to about 13 approvals for rural projects filed with different projects within CTP's offerings. And all of these approvals have come in without a request for evidence, which goes to, again, show the strength of the project, the strength of the regional center, but also, to my team's credit, the amount of work that we do in documenting the source of funds. So I wanted to make sure that for those of you that are trying to figure out whether this is actually something you want to do and what the risks are, that you hear directly from the projects. It's important that you build a relationship with the projects. For those of you that have spoken with me before, I say this and I will say this again. 800,000 is an obnoxious amount of money to have to put at risk. Yes, you are required to put the money at risk. That does not mean you put it blindly. You need to understand where the money is going. You need to form a relationship of trust with your regional center, with your chosen regional center. So with that, Christian, please take it away. It is all yours. Thank you for joining us on a Sunday.
No worries. Well, Kripa, Eileen, and everybody attending today, first off, thank you for that introduction. Happy Father's Day to everybody in attendance today. And as part of the introductions that Kripa outlined, I have English on lock, so very fluent in English. Everything else is a little bit of a stretch. But I'd like to say that I'm decent at Spanish, but I'm pretty sure anybody fluent would call me on that one. So that's my forte. But yes, as Kripa mentioned, I do want to also take a very brief moment and congratulate, obviously, the Buckhalter team, Kripa personally, as well as everyone who has had a hand in facilitating the petition filings. I know it's not just our project, but I can speak obviously on our project's behalf and the investors that Buckhalter has filed. It has been so reassuring to work with a firm, regardless of which project anybody on this call chooses today. I cannot express enough that working with Kripa and her team, if you have faith in them, first off, you need to have faith in your attorney, whoever you pick. But when you have faith placed in Kripa and the team who you're working with, they produce results. And that's one of the things I know that we've worked on some cases in the past where some of our investor families have been frustrated at times because they feel that Kripa and the team might be asking for, in their opinion, too much information. That this is too detailed. The government's not going to be looking at this. Every time that they have fulfilled those requests, We have seen straight approvals every time they have not complied with those requests. There has been either an RFE, or if they've switched attorneys because some other attorney told them what they wanted to hear, they come back with a really strenuous RFE that requires a rush, a mad dash at the 11th hour for the same things that were requested from the beginning. So I just want to caution any investor with that, just as Kripa was mentioning, that you need to have a relationship with your regional center, with your project. Completely agree with that. You need to have a relationship with the attorneys and trust and have faith that what they're asking for is not out of left field. These are not crazy requests. This is born out of thousands of petitions of experience. And I want to specifically single out Kripa with her experience with several of the key organizations close to either the lobbying groups or, in some cases, in federal court decisions. Having seen those decisions walked out, what that means for their families, either individual petitions or in mass. And so when Kripa tells us that we need to be procuring something as the project or with the investor, we take that seriously. And I strongly encourage that you as the individual investor families heed that warning as well. It's not just because we all like doing extra paperwork. It's to protect you from those crazy last minute requests that usually you've got either 90 days on an RFE, I think 30 days on a NOID. And as we've seen with the current administration, if they have any opportunity to give you a straight denial or go to that NOID, they're going to do it. So don't give them that opportunity. Listen to the attorneys and get your source of funds in line. So that's my my PSA at the beginning. But with that said, again, recognizing that it's a Sunday, it's Father's Day, I want to I'll get through my side of the presentation and get it back over to Kripa and the team on the source of funds and process related materials for the presentation. What I'm going to be focusing on specifically is project structure, as well as kind of some of the things, red flags that you should be looking for, whether it's in our project or in other projects as well. But as a brief point about who we are, one of the things that I get the most often is we do not have the same expansive marketing component that some of the other regional centers in the industry have had. And that's because we, as a firm, focus on smaller, or what we refer to as tighter projects, usually in around the $30 to $40 million range of a raise. And we've historically handled that in-house with B2B relationships with referral partners all over the world, or myself through our travels into, we've offices in Singapore, Dubai, Mexico City, partnerships in Montreal, Prague, Cape Town, South Africa, Lisbon, and a couple of Bogota, Colombia, and we're expanding into Santiago as well. So as part of that kind of visibility, CTP is a full service real estate developer based in Tampa, Florida. Our regional center is the CTP Atlantic American Regional Center, or the Florida Equity and Growth Fund Regional Center, depending if our projects are located in the Southeast or if they are in specifically the state of Florida. But while we might not have spent or had need to spend on those big budgeting, those big marketing budgets, we have helped place more than 900 investors into the EB5 program through our regional center and its partners. As a firm, we have been involved with EB5 since 2011, and I have personally facilitated the filings and green card submissions for over, at this point, 300 families within my direct connections. And I would say a large number of those have been through Kripa's handiwork, whether it's with Buchalter and some of her previous stops. But that's one of the, when you find someone who knows what they're doing and you can trust them, we continue to facilitate that relationship, because it's proven a very successful endeavor for our investors and obviously for the firm. So we look forward to that expanded collaboration going forward. But with that being said, the next element, I am the vice president of EB5. We also, our president and CEO is currently in Shanghai, along with our chief marketing officer. And then our vice president of real estate is currently back in the Tampa office. I spend a large amount of my time in Dubai or on the road, meeting with families in various markets, especially across India. My colleague Zachary will usually meet with families across the United States or our chief marketing, I'm sorry, our chief strategic manager, Paul Everhart, who is not pictured, will usually come and meet with our families face to face, whether that's in North Carolina at our project site, or I know we've recently made a bunch of trips out to Houston. I'm currently in Houston right now. So as that need arises, we always like to make that face-to-face connection. And frankly, this is just a quick side point. In the age of AI, where anybody can throw an AI voice onto a referral video and say that they're genuine, we like to be able to say that we can come to you face to face. I think that's going to be the future of our industry, and certainly anything that requires a minimum ticket of almost $1 million, as Kripa pointed out, between fees and investments and things of that nature. You are looking at a roughly 7-figure investment, and you need to know that who you're working with is able to get on a daggone plane and come and meet with you. So that's just a little side point that we like to pride ourselves on. As far as track record goes, through our regional center partnerships, we've helped place not just the number of investors, but we're up now over 50 projects across multiple sectors. But the sector we're going to focus on today, and what we've been focusing on within my tenure in the firm over the last 11 years, has been in the senior care space. The senior care sector for us has been a very secure offering, mostly because we've leveraged not just the access to capital that we have as a developer through our investment bank, which our CEO owns, but also through the exit strategies that are available through multiple government-sponsored enterprises, which I'll get into in a moment. But I just want to help highlight the fact that we are coming to you from a place of experience. We might not have seen it all, but we're getting pretty close at this point. There's a lot of reruns on those movie reels, thankfully, at this point, and it's made the journey a lot easier. But again, that's all about having the right partners as you're going through this. We are owners of the projects alongside you. We have a mutual alignment of interest for every one of the offerings. The equity is ours. The contributions are ours. The mezzanine capital is secured from our own balance sheets, and it's not something that we silo within each individual project. We tie CTP as a whole and our CEO's connections and balance sheet into these offerings, so that you know that we are incentivized to have the project succeed. This is not something that we can just walk away from. This is not something that is an, oh, shucks, we'll get them next time. We have millions and millions of dollars on the line before any EB5 investor gets involved, and that's always the case on our side. We are a vertically integrated regional center and development firm. We do not farm out the projects. It's always ours, and it's proven to be a reliable track record thus far. So we're going to keep utilizing that model going forward. So I'm going to go ahead and jump up now. The scooch back over into the specific offering that we have today. And that offering is going to be a senior care, specifically an independent living offering in the state of North Carolina. So let me go ahead and reshare my screen here with that piece available. And the offering, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the senior care industry, is you typically will have 3 variations of offerings of the specific location, of the specific facility. One will be, it's all based on level of care. One will be independent living, which is what this offering is. And it's basically just apartments for people over the age of 65. There's limited services available on site, and it's meant to be the starting point for someone who is looking to move out of their existing residence, but wants to be able to have a curated residency within a facility that still gives the apartment feel, but most likely will be designed for people over the age of 65, and oftentimes will be matched with a progression of care plan. So for example, this offering is an independent living in the area of Lake Lure, North Carolina, but it's adjacent to our phase 1 development, which was already constructed back in 2021. There was an EB5 offering as well. All of those EB5 investors received their green card, their I-526 approvals, but that was the assisted living. So the idea is that residents could move into this facility for as long as they need, and then as they need additional care, they can basically move across the street into a assisted living residency again, without having to disrupt their entire lives. So that's the idea behind this structure and design. The project is already under construction. And so I'm going to kind of skip past these parts because everything you're seeing here is available for upon request after the presentation. You don't need me to scroll through and read these slides to you. But I will highlight the fact that this is a 956F approved project. So we're not waiting for anything else in that regard. That set is all done. As you can see, it's already adjacent to a completely constructed and operational facility. One of the things I'd like to highlight is the fact that we do oftentimes we encourage site visits to come visit us. I will say right now we are in the process of moving out the existing residents for some infrastructure developments for the greater city of Lake Lure. We are actually constructing, with the mayor's blessing of Lake Lure, we're constructing the town hall for the city. For those of you who don't know, Lake Lure was hit by Hurricane Helene. Thankfully, our site was spared, but as a gesture to the greater community, we wanted to step up and be good corporate citizens. And so we are going to be moving our residents off site for about 6 months from phase one. This does not impact phase two. But we have the mayor's blessing, and also will be constructing, like I said, the town center. Outside of this development, that's not part of the EB5 offering, but just to show you the level of integration that we have within that community is the fact that we have the mayor's office and all permitting offices, everything that you can want from a developer standpoint, all in hand through those partnerships. And it's something that we fostered over the last 7 or 8 years, specifically within the city of Lake Lure, as we started construction on phase one back in 2017 with initial permitting plans and certificates of need and acquisitions of that nature. So for any of you who are coming to come see us on a site visit, please let us know. We'd be happy to host you. We'll have the general contractor meet you and kind of walk you through the plans of what's coming for the next 20 months, 18 to 20 months. But don't worry if you don't see any of the residents walking around in phase one. That's only a temporary thing while they do some much needed infrastructure improvements to the surrounding area for the communities nearby. So nothing to impact our site plan or our development. From a location standpoint, those of you who are familiar with North Carolina, you're looking at about a 30-minute drive outside of Asheville. So that is the community that we are closest to, but we do qualify as a rural project. So I get kind of the best of both worlds to be able to leverage the nearby Asheville growth and economic expansion, while also still qualifying for that priority processing with the rural designation from USCIS. And then I think the last thing I would state, just from the project side here, from the individual location, these are not what I would characterize as old age homes, right? These are apartments. You get the vibes. What you're seeing here, these are not just renderings. These are images from our previous developments. So this is the quality of care that we are building in those independent living communities. Again, you're trying to entice people to move in as a want on an independent living standard because they have other choices. So it is kind of a best of both worlds in the sense that you get that independent living and that apartment feel while still not having to sacrifice that level of care and availability for the nearby communities and residences. Let me go ahead and skip through here again. All of this is available going forward or after the fact to review, and I'm happy to get on calls either one-on-one or with the Buchalter team. But what we pride ourselves on, and you're going to sense a theme from this as I wrap up my portion of today's discussion, we focus as a firm on EB5 security first and foremost. Okay. In this project, we have the EB5 investor as the senior loan position, meaning there is no bank ahead of you. And I want to be very clear about this. I have heard from my time on the road, I know Kripa and her team have heard it too. When a lot of times you hear, yes, you're in the first priority position, you're in the first position for repayment. A lot of EB5 regional centers are using that as a first mezzanine position and trying to play some word games with you. In our projects, you are the senior lender. So you have first priority on the asset. That means that even in the event of a devaluation of the project below cost, the EB5 investors are still secured. So that's one of the differentiating factors of our offerings. We do have multiple mezzanine financing available for this project, which I'll show in just a moment. So we're not just reliant on EB5 capital, but we have secured it via, this is Zach's contribution as our vice president of real estate, to be able to structure this deal for the EB5 investors to get their repayment first, which further incentivizes CTP to retire the loan and get the monies back to you as quickly as possible. I'm going to skip through some of these paces because this is the discussions. Let me see here. From these elements, this is operational. I'll kind of get back into these as well. From a job creation standpoint, we are looking at a conservative, it's around 13 to 14 jobs per investor. That is on the conservative projection. So I just want to be very clear with that. This is not the max output that we are looking for. This is something that we do with USCIS so that we can always go above and beyond, but we never want to submit the 90th percentile outcome to USCIS, because then there's not really a margin for error. We go the opposite direction, where we'd rather submit a 25th percentile outcome. And if the metrics look good from that output, then we're going to be fine for everything else going down the road. But this will be where I leave you off and turn it back over to Kripa and the team, focusing on this particular piece, okay? So again, if you look at a project, what are the 3 phases of a development that you need to secure? The first is the construction phase, where there's no operational revenue coming in. In those scenarios, we already have 115% of the entire capital stack committed via different mezzanine financing. So we have a line of credit through our own investment bank, which our CEO is an owner of. We have a separate line of credit through a private equity firm, which specifically is contributed to our operator. And then we have a third line of credit that is available to CTP as a firm that we can deploy across any project that we want. Those lines of credit in total amass more than 100% of the entire capital stack. And that doesn't include the 20 to 25% on the equity piece that we've already contributed to the project. So construction phase and lack of operational revenue has been eliminated via those mezzanine financing already contributed. Again, we've got that locked down, but we've also raised at this point, I think we're up to 12 of the 35 investors are already subscribed or funded or filed into the project. So this is not a first out of the blocks offering for us. And then from an operational revenue standpoint, we have that secured via a certificate of need issued from the state of North Carolina. So the state of North Carolina is unique in that they will, once you acquire a certificate of need for a senior care development, they will block essentially any kind of competing sites within a statistically significant area. So you basically have a de facto monopoly towards any kind of senior care residence within what North Carolina deems to be a statistically significant area. So that's a huge operational boost for us as well. It is what allows us to hit an average of 93% occupancy within the first 12 months of operation. So that is a huge component for developments in the senior care space. And then lastly is our exit strategy. So our exit strategy, because you're building a senior care facility, you can refinance through the Department of Housing and Urban Development, the Federal Housing Administration, or even the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The people who license your beef and certify your beef, they do rural loans. We've helped refinance a couple of our projects in rural designations, which include Lake Lure Phase 1. It was refinanced through USDA. So having the first phase, second phase, and third phase of any project development secured is the key to making sure that the EB5 model works. It stands on its own, and it's why we've done now 18 senior care facilities in my 11 years with the firm, and we've never had a defaulted loan. We've never had a failed project on that front, and we're very proud of that fact. Even during COVID, we navigated through the COVID crisis with lockdown occupancies because the underlying metrics worked. And so that is where I would like to kind of leave off my piece here. Thank you all for my time and being able to present this to you. I'm happy to speak to you one-on-one afterwards or with the culture team on the call as well. But as far as the next level, I think it goes back into process and how anyone can utilize the EB5 program. And so, Kripa, I will throw it back over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And like I said, I know it's a Sunday, so feel free to
I'm
leave if you'd
I'm
rather, but
I'm
you're more
here.
than
I'm
welcome
here.
to stay.
All good.
All right, moving on to the pro into an overview of the program, right? Because I wanted to make sure that you had um, the information that you need, I guess. Give me a second. Sorry, I should have actually set this up as a slideshow. Um, so there's a lot of confusion, like I said at the beginning, and so I want to actually just clarify those before we even go any further. Number one, what is the deal with the Trump Gold Card? Is that going to impact the EB5? Is EB5 essentially done? If you're looking into the EB5, should you come into the project now? Should you wait and figure out what the Trump Gold Card is about? So, first things first. Number one, there are no details. In fact, there is no information as such about the Trump Gold Card. A website was apparently created at some point and it was published, I want to say Thursday or Friday. And this is not a joke, but I've learned, having still been in immigration the first time around for Trump 1.0, things tend to happen on a Friday, right? Just in general, things tend to happen on a Friday with this administration. And so my assumption is that my thought is it came out on Friday. But if you look at that website, if you look at the Trump Gold Card website, it's essentially a fact-finding mission, right? It's just a portal for you to express interest in the program, but it doesn't actually provide any specifics about the program or what it is that you're getting. So the first thing is what we are told is to expect a $5 million investment threshold. What you can invest in, can you invest in multiple projects? Does it have to be one project? Can you have multiple people pull in and hit that 5 million? None of that is known, right? So anything I tell you at this point would just be a guess. With respect to the EB5 program, what I will tell you is that for those of you that were around when this was 500,000, you'll remember that the EB5 program went away, right? It went away 2018. We did not have another new program in place until sometime 2022. The new program that we have in place is under the aegis of what we call the Reform and Integrity Act, RIA 2022. When the program came back, when the Reform and Integrity Act was established, this version of EB5 is now at 800,000 or 1.05 million. There are also set-asides, right? So there is certain number of visas. There are a certain number of visas that are reserved for applicants applying into the rural projects, applicants applying into high unemployment areas, and then applicants applying into infrastructure projects. So it's 20% reserved for rural, 10% for high unemployment, and then 2% for infrastructure projects. The other thing to remember is that the RIA EB5 program is essentially codified under law, which means that it is around until at least 2027, right? So even if the administration wanted to introduce a gold card, platinum card, call it what you will card, there they are looking essentially at lawsuits and multiple lawsuits at that if they try to replace the EB5 program with it, right? So a new program can come and exist alongside a current EB5 program. Once we get to 2027, and there is a sunset, right? So this version of the program either has to be renewed or it has to be continued. Worst case scenario, let's say we get to 2025, there is a sunset and the program is not renewed. Per law, when RIA was instituted, those of us in the industry that were able to have a voice then asked for there to be what we call a grandfathering provision, meaning that anybody that applied for EB5 while the program was still active and active under law, those applications are covered. So let's say you apply August of 2027 because you know the program is potentially going away in October of 2027. you would still be covered under the RIA. USCIS is still mandated to make a decision on your application, even if the program changes or the 800,000 goes up to $1 million, which is what they may very well do. The last time, again, it went from 5 to 8. They wanted it to be at $1 million. Well, 900,000. They brought it back down to 800,000. Will the amounts change in 2007? Possibly, right? At 800,000, the US green card is still pretty much probably the cheapest option in the market, especially if you look at similar sized economies and similar benefits like, well, Canada's program used to be 2.5 million, that no longer exists. Singapore's current version is 25 million. And so if you look at other countries that have similar provisions, right, the US program is still what this administration would say underfunded. So that's one thing for you to remember. So that's where we are with respect to the EB5 program and the Trump green card and what you can expect from it. Okay, now the other thing that I do want to spend some time on is with respect to source of funds. What we are seeing on the source of funds side is a very emboldened USCIS, which is essentially causing a little bit of problems with applicants because this administration is viewing national security in terms of economic security, right? Which means you are required again to show when and how you earned your money. When did you earn your money? How did that money come into the United States? I'm just skipping through these because we covered this earlier. I will come back to project selection because that's very, very important. But your money essentially can come from a variety of sources, right? And because it can come from a variety of sources, doesn't mean that you use every source. You want to go with the path of least resistance. You want to provide information to immigration that they can use to try to get you an approval in the shortest time possible. But can you use salary? Absolutely. And that salary can be from anywhere in the world. Let's say you're currently on an H-1B or an L-1 or O-1, but you're also using salary that you previously earned in your prior home country, or if you were in Canada for a while, before you came to the US trying to apply for an EB1C, whatever your salary is, as long as it is supported by tax returns and we can show it was legitimately earned, you can use that. Deposits and bank savings, again, as long as you can show where that money came from, right? So let's say you have $500,000 in the bank sitting around in a savings account. You want to use that? Absolutely no restrictions as long as you can prove when and how the money got there. Now, that money can be a loan, it can be a gift, it can be inheritance, it can be lottery winnings. Go ahead and use all of that. Lottery winnings, I need to be a little careful, I guess, with that because I know Christian and I have had issues with, I think it was Nigeria, was it? Where all of a sudden we had a whole slew of
Yeah.
lottery winners, which was just very interesting. But you can use pretty much anything. Investment portfolio, same thing. Your RSUs, employee stock options, as long as we can show when and how the money hit your bank, that's fine. I have had people ask me about crypto. I will say I am not in favor of using crypto only because it opens up a box that you would much rather not open, right? So because crypto is so very volatile, the only way for you to really be able to assess what the fiat is for the crypto, because you cannot invest crypto. You have to invest cash, right? And so at some point, you're going to have to convert that crypto into fiat. And that's where that's going to become confusing, is because you're going to have to go back and figure out what was the value of the crypto at the time that you purchased it? Where did the money come from to purchase the crypto? And then at that precise moment when you converted it into fiat, how much? What was the cost of that conversion? How did it go from whatever wallet you have it into, whether it's secured or unsecured, to a bank account? What was the path of that? And what taxes have you declared versus what taxes will you need to pay in that conversion process, right? So is crypto an option? Absolutely. It's probably best avoided. just because it lends itself to a lot more questions than it's worth. The other one that we're seeing a lot now is with respect to business income. If you own a business, and I fully understand, you may own 100% of the business and therefore it's yours and it's your money to do with as you will. Understood. Problem is, under immigration, it does not work that way. Business income can be used. Sorry, I'm not quite sure why it said screen sharing paused. But business income can be used as long as you can show, again, that the money is yours, you own the business, but where is that money sitting? If it is sitting in your own account, in your personal account, I mean, that's fine. But if it's sitting in the business account, then no, you cannot use the business account. The money has to be sitting in a personal account. It has to go. So if you have a corporate account and you are 100% owner of the company, as long as you can show that you claimed whatever money was in the corporate account, either as disbursement, as owner's profit, fees that were owed to you, 3 to 5 years back, whatever the case may be, you were paid that money as income. You paid taxes on that income as required by the laws of the country in which you live. And that money then went from your corporate account to your personal account. And then from your personal account over to the regional center's account, you're fine, right? You can do that. What you cannot do is just have it sitting in your personal account. The government does not like that. Now, the other issue that comes up when you are dealing with businesses is, well, I have a business partner, right? And so then the issue with the business partner becomes, well, how much of this income that's sitting in your corporate account belongs to your business partner? And if you are required to, are you then able to provide, let's say, a letter from your business partner which says, yes, technically, this amount of the money, 300,000, 400,000 is mine, but I have given it to my business partner either as a gift or a loan. If it is a gift, there needs to be a gift certificate. If there is a loan, we need to then be able to document what is the process and procedure for repayment of that loan. Is there an annual percentage that is going to be repayable? And what happens if you decide after 3 months you're no longer going to pay the loan? Then what is the collateral, right? Now, again, the law has shifted on this. It used to be back in the day, immigration did not require any collateral. You could just do a free loan. You didn't need to be tied to any sort of asset. They then changed their minds and then started rejecting a whole bunch of applications, primarily Chinese investors from mainland China. There were a whole bunch, and when I say a whole bunch, I mean more than 100 denials, saying the collateral is not secured, right? So there was a court case, there was a federal court decision, which came down, I want to say about 2 years ago, which says that's fine, you no longer need collateral. So you can do a loan without a collateral, but you still need a proper loan document, right? You cannot disguise a loan as a gift, and you cannot and should not disguise a gift as a loan. So real estate and HELOC. For those of you that are in the US and have some equity built into your home, I understand that may be your biggest financial asset. And so you want to use a HELOC, which is fine. USCIS is very accustomed to seeing HELOC as a source or as a part of your portfolio with respect to where your money came from. If it is US-based property and you are taking a HELOC against a US-cited property, no issues. If, however, you are from India, and this is particularly for applicants that may be Indian nationals, if you are an Indian national and you own property in India and you want to take a HELOC against that property, but use that HELOC to fund an EB5 investment in the US, that is not going to work. There's been a change in Indian law. Most banks now have language on their loan documents which say you cannot use proceeds of bank loans for speculative foreign investments, and EB5 counts as a speculative foreign investment. That language, I don't think, is going to change. Even if your relationship manager says don't worry about it, we will look the other way. Do not do it. RBI, the Reserve Bank of India, is very, very firm on this. The reason they changed the law in the first place is because of the likes of Vijay Mallya and Nirav Modi and the others that, bilked a bunch of Indian state banks and fled the country. That's why the laws changed. I don't see that changing until and unless there is some resolution with the banking regulation systems in India. But for now, you can use HELOC in the US. If you have family in India that can take a bank loan against that property and then gift it to you, you may be okay. But again, that's something you absolutely want to speak with an attorney about because this is a very significant issue, at least for those of you that may have property in India. The other issue for those of you that may be Indian citizens is HUF. Any properties that are a part of HUF have to be dealt with very, very particularly because, again, that means it is owned by the family, right? And so then the elders in the family would essentially need to file quitclaim deeds or gift deeds, saying they've gifted their interests to you and they have quitclaimed their interests. So if any of you have properties in HUF, that's going to be an issue. The self-directed IRAs is something that is quite new. I mean, again, I've been in EB5 world, as I call it, since 2011 at least. I don't ever encounter having had clients ask me about STIRAs, but over the last 2 years, I seem to be having this conversation once every 2 weeks, right? Where people are looking at essentially using their 401ks or self-directed IRAs to fund EB5 projects. Some regional centers will allow you to use STIRAs, others will not. It is an issue of compliance. It is an issue of additional risk for the regional center. So check with them before you go ahead and clear out your STIRAs or your 401ks. But again, is this a legitimate source of funds as a part of your EB5 source of funds application? Yes, it is. Gift as a source of funds, again, as I said, perfectly fine, no issues. The thing to make sure is that we have a gift deed from your giftor and also your giftor, the person giving you the gift, is able and willing to provide us complete financial documentation to show when and how they earned the money, right? So if you're receiving a gift of 800,000 or even 200,000 from a giftor, we need to be able to make sure that the giftor is able to provide us at least tax returns for the last 2 to 3 years, along with bank statements, showing the money flowing out of their account into your account. Path of funds is an issue for those of you that are Indian citizens, Indian residents, or Chinese investors living in mainland China. Chinese investors, you are restricted to 50,000 renminbi per year. Indian investors, you fall into one of two buckets. And again, this is under the FEMA rules, and RBI, the Reserve Bank of India, is very, very particular about this and want to make sure that you abide by the rules that they have set. So if you are an Indian citizen, Indian resident, you are restricted to 250,000 per year. Non-resident Indians, even if you are in the US on an F1 student visa or an H1B, if you have been outside of India for a year, 365 days or more, I think it's actually 180 days, but I tend to practice a little more conservatively. So I will say 365 days or more, you should qualify as an NRI. If you qualify as an NRI, then your limit is $1 million per fiscal year. You also then, as an NRI, have the option of using NRE or NRO accounts to remit funds out of India without being subject to the TCS. Because right now, for those of you that are Indian citizens or have properties in India, not only are you restricted to that 250,000 cap, you also have to pay a 20% tax at origin. But if you are a non-resident Indian and you are able to use NRE or NRO accounts, that 20% TCS does not apply, okay? Also, the Indian fiscal year, keep that in mind because the fiscal year is from April through the end of March of the following year, right? So April 2025 through March 2026 would be the current Indian fiscal year. And that 250,000 is per fiscal year. So if you're planning on jumping into this process, sometime in February, then you can use your 250,000 allocation in February and then make a separate transfer again come March, because that would be a new, or April, because that would be a new fiscal year. For those of you that are Chinese investors or have funds coming in from China or from Pakistan, Bangladesh, or Sri Lanka, because those are also very, very currency regulated environments. Currency swap, meaning you have a family member in the US or a friend in the US and someone in your home country, your parents or whoever in the home country wants to give 500,000 in local cash to a person there, and let's say they have a family member here and that family member then gives you the equivalent in US dollars, that would be a currency swap. I'm going to recommend that you not do that. Again, like I said, I serve on the AILA National Board. One of the things that we have seen on the AILA National EB5 Committee, one of the things that we have seen is a significant percentage of denials and notice of intent to deny from USCIS, from the Immigrant Program Office for currency swaps. So far, most of the denials seem to be, also because they use it a lot more, seem to be against Chinese and Vietnamese investors. But a currency swap is a currency swap, irrespective of the denomination, right? Whether you're using yen or whether you're using Indian rupees or Pakistani rupees. So if you're needing to do a currency swap, then again, work with an attorney that understands this entire regulatory scheme about moving money from one jurisdiction to another, because this is something that immigration is absolutely going to look through with a fine-tooth comb. All right. What else? The source and funds report. Eileen will tell you because she's seen mountains of papers in my office when I'm doing this, but I write these reports myself. And this is probably the most labor-intensive part of the EB5 process. We have to get it right. If we don't get it right, you're looking at a denial. There are 2 points in your EB5 journey where your application might be denied. The first part is at the I-526. Most of the denials at the I-526 stage will be because you were not able to adequately document your source and path of funds, right? The second possibility for a denial comes in at the I-829 stage, which 9 times out of 10 is because the 10 full-time jobs that you were required to create were not created, right? And so again, going back to the very, very start of this program, when Christian said, we ask for more, we ask for a lot of documents, he speaks from experience. Christian and his team have long suffered with the mountain of evidence that I ask for. But again, there is a reason that I ask for them, right? Don't want to keep tooting our horn here, but we have had an unprecedented 14 or 15 approvals now just from March through now. We just got 2 early in June. No RFEs, no challenges, just straight approvals. And the reason for that is, again, because of the number of documents that I ask for, so that I can write the source of funds report that accounts for pretty much everything that immigration wants to see. And then we don't have to deal with it, right? You're done. You have your I-526. I know there's nothing there that they can come back and say, oh, we missed this at the I-526 stage, so now we're going to raise it when you're asking us to remove your conditional residence. So again, the process requires you to take risk. I understand that, but that risk is not risking a denial because you don't have, cannot find, it takes too long to find particular documents. The risk that you are required to take as a part of the EB5 process is to put your capital at risk. But again, that is why you need to have a relationship with the regional centers and with the attorneys that you work with, right? There needs to be a relationship of trust. But this source of funds report is very, very crucial. And we can only really write the source of funds report well and document all of your income if you provide all of the documentation that we're asking for. In terms of timelines right now, where are we? There is talk of possible retrogression. I think we can firmly state right now, and I am a little skeptical of saying anything with certainty, particularly under this administration, but I think all said and done, where we are right now, I feel fairly confident that we are not going to see a backlog through the end of September, right? The US immigration fiscal year starts October 1, meaning that if you file your applications, particularly for those of you that are in the US, if you are in the US on valid H-1Bs, F-1s, L-1s, whatever. I hope it does not come to this, but I know Microsoft has had layoffs. Amazon seems like they are heading for what they call silent layoffs. There was just a news report, I think yesterday or today, that Google is now again mandating return to work policies, but they are also offering buyouts, right? And that generally tends to portend a mass layoff. So if you are in the US and either have been informed of an impending layoff or have been impacted by layoffs, but you are within that 60-day grace period, you still have time to file an EB5 and file it with concurrent adjustment of status application filing, meaning that you would then be eligible to get a work permit and then later a travel permit while your I-526 application is pending. But again, I don't think we are going to see a retrogression until at least the end of this fiscal year, so until the end of September, which means for those of you that may be in this precarious job situation, or perhaps you have children that are 17, 18, and you have an EB2 priority date that is 2014, 2015, my recommendation would be, to the extent that you are able to, again, with the amount being what it is, to the extent that you are able to, that you file your application sooner rather than later. We do expect a backlog, which we suspect will come in sometime in the summer of the next fiscal year, right? So summer of, again, USCIS fiscal year starts October 1. So October 1, 2025, through any time till about June or July is when we might actually see a retrogression come in. How long will that retrogression be? Again, it's a bunch of speculation. It could be 2 years. I don't think it will be as long as 5 years. But it depends on how many applications are currently pending at USCIS and also at the consulates. But if you can file, you are better off filing sooner rather than later. That being said, the other thing that we are seeing now are a lot of requests for loans, right? EB5 loans and also partial payments. Partial payments are fine. We've done partial payments. I've worked with CTP on a couple of partial payments. We have gotten those approved without an RFE, but, and there is a big but, the approval without RFE, I believe, has been because we have been very, very strict with our clients that they have completely vested, right? So your entire 800,000 is invested within 11 months. We are seeing USCIS take on average 7 to 10 months to make a decision on EB5 applications on the I-526 part. And so the worst case scenario is, let's say you start the process in June, you get to December, you've invested half the money. At that point, USCIS has the right to issue a request for evidence saying, where's the rest of it? And so the way that we have structured it is to provide a very specific timeline saying we are investing with the first 400,000. This is where the entire 400,000 came from, right? Tables, charts, all of it to show exactly when and how the 400,000 was earned. And then the remainder 400,000 will be invested within the next 4 or 5 months. This is exactly where that money is going to come from. Right now, again, for those of you that are in tech or may have RSUs, you understand you have RSUs that mature on a particular date, right? And so we can provide immigration that explanation and say, for example, I have liquidated X number of RSUs, income that was in a savings account, or perhaps you had a certificate of deposit that has either reached maturation or is about to reach maturation. But you want to be fully invested, all said and done, within 9 months. Otherwise, you are looking at least a request for evidence, if not a downright denial. All right. Um, I know I sort of sped through that, but again, like I said, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. The number on here, the 2251167, is my WhatsApp number, so feel free to send me a message, text, email, call, whatever. You have all three at this point. More than happy to answer questions. And then again, like Christian said, we can certainly join forces and have a joint call with you, or we can do, you can speak to Christian, CTP separately and to us separately. This is really just about the two of us coming together to support investors as best we can. That is one of the other reasons why I absolutely love working with CTP. They are, as is my team, very, very client-centric. And that's one of the things that I really like working with them for. So again, any questions you have, feel free to either type those out, just, unmute yourself, and ask questions if that's how you want to do it. But that is essentially the end of the prepared part of the program. We will now move to Q&A, if there are any. Eileen, anything that's already come in?
There's one question asking questions about what kind of investment they can use. They're asking is it risky to use SDIRA for self-directed?
IRA?
Yeah.
Yeah, so yes, I mean, it is risky to use DIRAs, right? Because again, you're taking it out of your investment portfolio and putting it into a speculative investment. So irrespective of the EB5 aspect of it, the financial aspect of it, is it risky? Yes. The other thing with steerers, and I will ask Christian to weigh in on this because I know CTP in particular has looked at this very closely. The other thing with steerers is there is a very specific method that you have to follow in order to actually be able to use that steerer or the funds in steerer for an EB5 investment. And the decision may not entirely be yours, right? Because you have to get write-offs on it. You have to have the bank agree to it. You have to have the fund manager agree to it. But can it be done? Yes. But Christian, do you want to provide more context on that?
Yeah, I'm happy to weigh in on that. So yes, we have a couple of families who have funded into our projects, and I'm going to be very clear with how I word this because I found it interesting. Where we had a couple families who approached us saying, "Hey, I want to utilize the Stira to invest." I said, "Okay, I've never done it before because, like you said, Kripa, this is a new thing." So, but one of the reasons why I am, as Kripa knows, I would use the word addicted to the EB5 scene, if you will, is because I am the kind of person who always likes to see something new. And so when somebody said, "Hey, can I do a stira?" I don't know how to do that, but we're going to figure out how to do that together. And so made some phone calls, got it set up, and we walked out the process to where I said, "Okay, CTP is now eligible and ready for you to send over your stira funds for EB5. We got it done." They, at the 11th hour, chose not to do a stira transfer on their own. We had facilitated everything on our side. But part of the reasoning was because exactly what Kripa just said. Okay, we've laid the groundwork. Does that mean that Voya is now prepared to facilitate the transfer over to CTP? That the fund manager's house were willing to do that or able to do that without some sort of maybe tax liability or some alternative financial mechanism triggering? That was where at the 11th hour, the investor said, "You know what, I need more time to investigate this. Let's go ahead and start with the partial payment, and then I'll work through other mechanisms in order to be able to either utilize the stira or find some sort of alternative." So it is a very unique element to this. And like you said, you got to find the regional center or the developer that's willing to do it because there is an element of risk to that. While we are able to accept that and willing to accept that, it is still something that there is going to be a lot of a heavy lift on the individual investor in order to get that done. right? Because I can only do so much on the facilitating of the funds, but on the transfer and compliance management of that side for the funds that you've accrued to date, beyond the cost basis, that's entirely on the investor's perspective. So I I know that's not necessarily the clearest answer that I'm sure the investor is looking for me or you, Kripa, to go, absolutely, key this over and you're done. But that's just not what the STIRA is designed to be, right? The STIRA is designed to be thrown into a financial management house, that it stays there until you turn 65 or 59 and a half, I guess. That's it. So utilizing it inside of the EB5 is new for the securities industry. And when something is new inside of the securities industry, especially for the big guys, it can create some headaches in facilitating. So just keep that in mind as you're looking through it. That definitely is a dialogue between, in our case, myself, my investment team, Kripa, and your current wealth manager or their investment firm.
Thank you. All right. So another question we have is more light on loans and maximum amount of loans with multiple sources combined. So can you use multiple sources of loans? You have an $800,000 limit, right? That is your minimum that you have to invest. You have to also then account for administration fees. Each regional center will charge you a one-time admin fee, and that administrative fee can range from 30 to I think 75, 80 is the highest I have encountered in the industry. The regulations require you to show source of funds for your principal, which is your 800,000 plus the admin fee, right? And so can you use a variety of loans to show where that money came from? Yes. Can that be a home equity line of credit plus a loan from a family member plus a loan from a friend? Absolutely. Again, there is no collateral required, right? Under matter of Zhang, you are no longer required to show each of these loans is secured by collateral. The thing that you're going to have to essentially be prepared to answer is, okay, so let's say you've got a HELOC, you've shown, or you need to show at least, where did the money come from to buy the house? Then the bank will obviously give you the mortgage documentation and the refinance mortgage documentation. So that goes to immigration. Then the loan that you are getting from a family member or a friend, like I said, there needs to be a loan document, right? How is the money going to be repaid? As in what time frame? Is this repayable in 6 months? Is it repayable in 1 year? Is there some sort of an interest that is due? If there's a default on the loan, what happens? Is there a ballooned interest, right? So it needs to be a proper loan document. So can you have 4 different sources, but each of those sources be a loan of varying amounts? Yes. Does that make your application weaker? Not necessarily, but again, it depends on the documentation that you have, right? Okay, so that one's done. There was a series of questions about a writ of mandamus, and my apologies, I'm not entirely sure that I understand the question, but I will attempt to answer it anyway. So, do I file writs of mandamus? Yes, all the time. I don't use them, and fortunately have not needed to use them as often as some other attorneys. But a writ of mandamus is essentially an action that you file with a U.S. federal court, ideally in the jurisdiction, having jurisdiction in the state where you reside or over the district in which you reside. A writ of mandamus is basically forcing the U.S. Immigration Service to give you an answer as to why your case has been pending longer than the average processing time, right? The problem with filing writs of mandamus right now in federal court, and again, I say this as someone that has successfully filed not just single writs of mandamus, but also has partnered with attorneys to file class action lawsuits against the government for delays. The problem you have is several. Number one, there is no set adjudication timeline that USCIS is required to follow for an EB5, right? And so in order to file an application of writ of mandamus with the federal court, you have to have what we in the law refer to as ripe, right? Is the matter ripe for adjudication? typically, and again, depending on your attorney, that can be anywhere from 6 months to 12 months beyond the posted adjudication times, right? So let's say you filed your application and it's now been 18 months and you haven't received a response, but somebody else in the same project got a response in 7 months. Can you file a writ of mandamus? Sure. But understand that it does not require the government to give you a response, right? All that you are allowed to do under a writ of mandamus is to file the action. The minute you file the action, the US attorney has the responsibility of responding to that writ of mandamus. 9 times out of 10, they will respond seeking summary judgment, meaning closing down the case immediately, saying either that it is within normal processing time, or you have not shown any reason as to why you have been harmed or disadvantaged, or that the government is at fault for not making a decision on your case as soon as you think they should have, right? And so all in all, a writ of mandamus can take somewhere between 6 to 8 months to be adjudicated. And even then, very often, and again, I work with the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Western District of Washington here in Seattle. And I work with it very closely because we file multiple mandamus lawsuits per year. But 9 times out of 10, what you're going to agree to is a settlement with the U.S. Attorney's Office where they get maybe another 180 days within which to take action, right? And the reason why I'm putting this in quotes is because more often than not, that action from them may very well be a request for evidence. They are required to take action. That is the action they take, right? So I hope that answers your question, but that is a writ of mandamus. It is not a part of the EB5 program. I don't know if that was the confusion. I understand that mandamus gets talked about almost as a part of the EB5 program because so many attorneys are saying, yeah, I'll file a mandamus. Yes, I'll file a mandamus. It is not historically a part of the EB5 application.
Kripa,
Okay.
would you, just as a really quick add on there, would you kind of
Yeah.
differentiate, I'm with you. I've seen that a lot, especially in the WhatsApp groups where what I've seen happen is people will invest in these high unemployment projects, which to my knowledge, based on the findings that just came back from the last Freedom of Information Act request, that the urban projects are still very, very minimally adjudicated, if at all.
Yep.
And so there's this wave of people who are saying, well, now I want to do a writ of mandamus, but there's no, like you said, there's no established timeline. You skip all of that on a rural. Like we've not had to file a writ of mandamus on any one of the investors in our last in all of our post RIA rural projects, and they've been adjudicated on average around the 8.5, 9 month. And that time has come down. But yeah, I think that's maybe what a lot of people are hearing is, will you go into an urban, then you file a writ of mandamus almost as though it's part of the process. It doesn't need to be.
Yeah. It's not a part of the process. And again, Christian, thank you for that. So I think I mentioned this, and I don't know how many of you caught on it. I understand I was speaking quite quickly, but the average processing time for a rural project right now is somewhere between 7 to 10 months. All of our approvals have been within 10 months. We have, I think, 3 that are actually between months 6 and 7, but otherwise within 10 months off the bat. Rural projects, I am closer to 16 months, 14 to 16 months. High unemployment projects, I am closer to 14 to 16 months wait time on those. And so I understand why there may be confusion of, well, I applied, in this project and I got mine approved in 6 months and I'm still waiting for mine. Go ahead and file a mandamus. That's not necessarily how that works. Okay. So there is a question, which I think, Christian, you're best placed to answer, but in case of retrogression, how will CTP handle redeployment? What I was going to say was one of the other things that the industry asked for under the RIA was for sustainment to be 2 years so that there wouldn't need to be redeployment, right?
Yeah.
You're only required to show that the money was deployed and the jobs were created and sustained for 2 years. There does not need to be deployment for any projects after RIA. And now I'm going to say something which is going to cause me to get into trouble with one of the advocacy organizations. So One of the main advocacy organizations or industry groups in EB5 is IIUSA, which is Invest in the United States. And for reasons that probably they will answer you, because I have not received an answer to this question, although I have asked it multiple times, IIUSA decided to file a lawsuit against USCIS challenging that 2-year sustainment and saying that that was somehow bad for the industry, bad for the real estate developers, I assume. And so that case is now pending in court. We still do not have a resolution. But if there is a decision on that, and if things go the way IIUSA had asked for it to go, then we will be back to a 5-year sustainment period, meaning that regional centers will have to show that the jobs were created and maintained and sustained for 5 years as opposed to 2 years, and then you may have the redeployment issue. But as of now, there is a case pending. There is no redeployment required in effect. But Christian, please, your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, so two things. One, very, very brief. This will be like a drive-by on your IIUSA point. One of the things that I found that, again, we are not, CTP is not one, we pride ourselves on, some of you may consider this as a negative. We consider it a positive on, that's as any good salesperson should, right? On the fact that the IIUSA model was derived around firms who were coming in, trying to find what that angle was. And so they started to market a 2 or 3 year, I've seen more so 3-year loan term. Only invest if it's a 2-year or 3-year loan term. Only invest if it's 2-year or 3-year loan term. And so they signed up a bunch of investors. And then if you can look online on who the IIUSA gold member council is, or whoever the biggest people who contribute into basically the board of IIUSA, they're the biggest names in the regional center market. Who stands to benefit from then subsequently locking your funds in on 3-year loan terms and then having to be forced to move to a 5-year loan term should this court case go the direction that IIUSA is settling or is aiming for? Keep that in mind when you do your evaluation, number one. As far as how CTP handles it, yes, you're correct. We only do the 2-year sustainment period as a need. We've matched the industry on the 3-year loan term just out of necessity. But also, if there is ever a need for retrogression, we already have our mezzanine EB5 fund available to where we can do things on a 12-month redeployment basis. So again, we at CTP, because of the capital structure, are incentivized. We're not able to withdraw any of our debt or equity contribution until the EB5 investors are repaid in full. And so our paydays are locked behind the return of your capital. So we're not like a typical, like an EB5AN or an EB5 United, where they're trying to deploy the capital for as long as possible because they make the money on the arbitrage and the interest accruals over that period of time. We're in it to have successful development projects that are profitable. End of story. So that kind of an arrangement is part of how we position ourselves separately. But that means that legally speaking, based on what Kripa has outlined and what we've seen as well, we don't need to do any kind of retrogression. Redeployment. But if there ever became some sort of a scenario where that was required, we would only do anything beyond the initial loan term. We have a 3-year loan term with 2 1-year extensions, and then everything after that would be on single-year mezzanine redeployments, so that as soon as legally we were able to give the money back, we can and get you out of the deal.
Thank you. So one other question that came up was, what is the maximum time that someone can expect to have their funds locked up? And I will say that the industry average right now is 5. But again, this is something you want to speak to the regional centers about. One of the things that you want to do is be very careful about project selection, right? Which project you're working with. And I want to be clear here, as attorneys, we are not registered broker-dealers, right? So you have to understand EB5 is a securities offering. They are unregistered securities, but they are still a securities offering. and are governed by the laws of the Securities and Exchange Commission. And the SEC says very clearly that attorneys should not, and legally cannot be a part of the project selection process, right? So, for example, I will put projects in front of clients, but my role is basically to give you background information of what I know and what I have seen with my clients over the last 17 odd years, right? But I am not going to tell you, go select this project, work with this project. This is a good project. That would be me asking to be disbarred. So we're not doing that. But one of the things that you want to do in that process of selecting projects is to ask the project, what is the amount of time that you're going to keep my money for? Across the industry, you will see generally 5 years, right? That tends to be standard. There are some projects that will say 3+2, or there are some projects that will say 5+1 or 5+2. And so you just want to keep that in mind. But Christian, are there any specifics with respect to CTP projects that you want to go into here?
I would say for this one, and I want to be very clear on that element as well, just so everybody understands. And this is one of the things I love about working with Kripa. I know that Kripa connects investors with other projects and other regional centers. That's the way it should be. Investors should be able to compare and contrast with different projects and find the right fit. We are not going to be the right fit for everybody. I know that. Hopefully, the investors know that, and certainly Kripa knows that. So that's just part of the game. What I would caution any investor into looking towards is, and I hate the broker dealer industry in EB5. I come from a wealth management background where it was very clear cut. You work with broker dealers because you were selling securities in, different 401ks or what have you, in the United States. It was very easy. In EB5, it really does feel like a mafia setup where, and that's with the firm who has to have a broker dealer involved for our US investors. But please keep in mind when you're looking at a project, if you're dealing with a quote, I'm using air quotes, a broker dealer, somebody who is licensed, they're a broker dealer, but across the hallway from where their office is the immigration lawyer, to where they can say, no, 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 I'm the broker dealer. That's the attorney. We're different. Use common sense. Okay. There's clearly a component there that if it's not a legal conflict of interest, it's just not the best interest for you or your monies. So do your due diligence, not just on the project, but I think the biggest thing that I would advise families on is, just because someone has the broker dealer seal does not mean that A, they are truly independent. B, it does not mean that they don't have an existing conflict of interest. And certainly C, it does not mean they have your best interest at heart. When I go and buy, my residential real estate, I know that the realtor is trying to sell me to the largest house that they can put me in. That's what a broker dealer is doing for you. They're just doing it legally because the attorneys can't legally say, you need to go here, you need to go there. So keep that in mind when you're kicking tires on projects and also on broker dealers. That is not a surefire way to guarantee that you've got someone in your corner. To me, it's the immigration attorneys who do a better advisory, because if your investment fails, you go after the immigration attorneys in the project. Broker dealers can just say, well, I gave you the advisories and I disclosed properly. The risk was yours. So keep that in mind as to who you're going to be working with for the next 2, 3, or 5 years.
Thank you. All right, looks like we have one other question. After temp GCs, are there any restrictions for the dependents before they can get their permanent GC? Yes. So one thing you have to understand is that once you become a conditional green card holder, you are still a green card holder. You are still a lawful permanent resident, which means there are some restrictions, there are some obligations that will attach to you and to your family members. Chief amongst those are, you must now declare all financial assets anywhere in the world. You must declare all income anywhere in the world, irrespective of whether you visited for a day or not. As a US citizen, you are required to declare global income and global assets, including global bank accounts, right? So there are different measures that will happen if you fail to do either one of those. The other issue is, as a lawful permanent resident, you are required to maintain residence in the US. What that means is one of two things. And again, a lot of this is in the news right now, right? Like, we started this 2.0 of the Trump administration hearing about lawful permanent residents or green card holders that was sent back at airports. And there was all of this confusion about what was happening. Well, the law has not changed. The law has always been the same. It is that this administration has decided to take a very high-handed approach towards enforcement of that law. A lawful permanent resident or a green card holder is required to maintain residence. What that means is ideally, anytime you leave the US, you should not leave for a period of more than 6 months at a stretch. If you want to leave for 6 months, if you need to leave for 6 months, if you think you may need to leave for 6 months, my advice is apply for a travel permit as soon as you get your green card and then leave. Once you have your travel permit, you can be out of the US for up to a year and a half and not have it impact your green card. But if you are going to maintain a green card, then you need to commit really to coming into the US at least once every 180 days or before 180 days. If you fail to do that, then they, and when I say they, I mean Customs and Border Protection, has the right to put you into secondary inspection and force you to explain to them what ties you have maintained to the United States and why you should be allowed to return, right? And that same rule applies for spouses and children. Now, depending at what point you get your green card, if your child is in school in a foreign country, and let's say they are in grade 8 or 9 or 10 and in the middle of their education, can you apply for a travel permit saying, my child is in grade 10, we need another year for this person to finish their schooling and then they will move to the US? Yes. But you are required to maintain physical presence in the US. There are things that you can do to preserve and protect that. You don't have to be here 365 days, but you do at least have to maintain physical presence. All right, we are out of time. We are well over time actually at this point. And I want to make sure that everybody is able to go back and salvage what's left of your evenings. So thank you all for joining us. Christian, thank you, thank you, thank you. I know you are in Texas with your kids, so thank you very much for taking time away from them. And I will follow up with everybody maybe tomorrow or day after with contact information for Christian and just some additional contact information for us. But like I said, feel free to contact him and his team. All of them are absolutely lovely. Love working with all of them. And I'm sure you will be in very good hands, or feel free to contact Eileen and I, and we can help facilitate the conversation or the communication with CTP as well. All right. Thank you all very much for joining. Good evening.
Thank you guys. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.